So I'm about to get into the system a little bit more properly, just around the corner. And these are the systems that have allowed me personally to go from studying 15 to 20 hours a day, getting only 2 or 3 hours of sleep, studying like crazy, never taking any breaks. I had no hobbies, no life to speak of. All I did was study, and it's just a horrible time. I was mentally and emotionally unstable. My heart rate was just through the roof. I was physically very unhealthy. I just felt terrible. I felt like just like a shadow that existed on this earth, and it was horrible. And I did that in order to get good grades. And for me personally, it was to get into medical school and eventually, get through medical school and all of that sort of stuff. But it was just so completely unnecessary. And the systems that I'm going to teach you are derived from the years of painful trial and error and learning that was involved in allowing me to start only studying 2 or 3 hours, sometimes even in an entire week, getting great sleep. I started dancing as a hobby. I went to the gym regularly. I had a great social life. I started, doing random little hobbies here and there. I got more into my art. I got into exploring different types of dance. There was basically, a colorful, varied life that I enjoyed, that I was able to live because I just freed up so much time out of the library from having to study. And I was getting a level of academic achievement, which was honestly probably even better than what I had received initially. So I was still getting really great results, and I was still achieving all my academic goals. I even managed to do a separate honors degree, which I got first class for. I went and did a bunch of other research things, which I was able to publish papers for. I was able to start a company, and I was able to teach students, almost full-time hours, 30, 40 hours a week on top of going through medical school and studying. So my life became so much richer because of these systems. And when you learn these systems well, you won't even need any of the tips that I talked about before. You can just work off these basic principles, and over the years you'll be able to adjust them and really fine tune them and make them your own. And that's the beauty of it, is that you're going to be able to create a system that's perfectly molded for the way that you like to think. And you'll realize that actually studying is not that difficult when you tap into how your brain really works. So I'm really excited to be able to share that with you. And that is, again, just around the corner. But after having worked with so many students, I've realized that there are some students that get amazing success with this. We're talking about students like Olivia and Conan that I talked about before, who they are studying 4 to 5 or 7 times less than they were before, and the results they're getting completely below their previous academic achievements, way out of the water, into another ocean completely. These are students who are achieving in the top 0.5%, top 1% of their cohort, when before they were borderline failing. These are students, I've had one student who was interviewed by their school because their teachers couldn't figure out why they were able to achieve so highly while not seeming to study like any of her friends. And in fact, actually, that school ended up interviewing me to get me involved in running programs in that school. So, these are the types of results that I've seen a lot of my students able to get. And whether they go to a great school or a not so great school, or whether they're really wealthy or financially just making ends meet, or whether they come from a different ethnic background or different social pressures, I've worked with a very diverse range of students, and I've seen that the basics of these techniques in the system will work. And yet, despite all of that, there are still students that will not actually be able to pick it up and go with it. I've mentioned some of the issues before, some of the common traps that people fall into. But I want to talk about something that's even more root to that, because you know about those common traps. You've heard me talk about it a little bit. So now I think you're ready to hear about the thing that I think, honestly, it sets apart the winners from the losers, okay? And I'm not going to go into what the win and lose really means, but whatever your goal is, if you're planning on achieving that goal, I think this is really something that sets it apart. And this is not my own concept. There's actually even books written about this topic, and that is the idea of unlearning. Unlearning. So the idea is that whenever we learn anything new, we have a set of biases. Okay, it's almost like sunglasses, very heavily tinted sunglasses that are covering our eyes and our perception of things. So if I teach you a new technique, if you've heard something from somewhere else that this is how studying or learning is meant to be, or this is how you think, or this is how you are, or how you do things, or how it has to be, then that's going to taint your experience of using the technique. And you're never going to be able to be free of all biases. No one can. But we have to be aware of them, because if we're not aware of them, we stop ourselves from unlearning. So it's kind of like if someone was, if someone, every time they got stressed, they had like a nervous tic or something. And in fact, when I was in my early years of high school, I did have a nervous tic. I had this shoulder shrug thing that I used to do. I used to feel really uncomfortable and tense in my shoulders and my neck. I used to have this head tic that was really bad at a period of my life. So there was this nervous tic. And the idea is that when you're stressed, that response can come out more. When you're challenged, the response can come out more. Or in this example, when you're studying, there might be a certain habit, the way that you study or the way that you think about material when you're learning, that actually gets in the way. In order for you to move past that habit and develop a new habit, we first need to take that away and unlearn it. We need to unlearn the bad habits and the bad responses. I had to unlearn my tic first in order to replace that with a healthier, more productive, or in this case, more efficient alternative. But it's impossible to fill a cup that's already full. And so that's what unlearning is about. And so all the books that have written about unlearning talk about how people who have what it takes to succeed are able to unlearn very, very quickly and very, very openly. They don't attach a sense of ego and self-worth to holding on to ideas just because they've held on to it before. Instead, they place a sense of identity as being someone who's very flexible and very adaptive and isn't afraid to discard parts that don't work in favor of alternatives that do work. It doesn't mean that they're so open-minded that their brain falls out. They're still skeptical and critical and good critical thinkers, but it means that they're very open to being wrong so that they can quickly unlearn, get rid of that, and replace it with something that's faster and easier to replace that with. And when you shift that sense of ego and attachment from I'm a person that studies like this and thinks like this to being I'm the type of person that's willing to overcome and adapt very easily, then your life in general is going to get a lot easier, but especially this process, because again, the techniques that I teach you will be very different to the way that you may have approached studying or learning ever before in your entire life. And this is especially true for some students who have had certain bad experiences with learning. So often students will have tried certain techniques that may seem surface level a little bit similar to things that I've said. A good example would be when I was talking about how you have to do inquiry-based learning where you're solving problems. People would say, oh, I solve problems. I already solve problems. That's nothing new. But the thing is, most people aren't trying to create problems before they've even learned it, right? And I mentioned that this at the time is that you can't learn and then solve problems. You have to figure out problems to solve first and then learn in order to solve those problems in reverse order. So there are a lot of these nuances here, which I'll try to point out. But if you have a bad experience with previous studying techniques, it means nothing about the techniques that I'm going to teach you. Remember, the techniques that I'm going to teach you are not only research-based, but they've been proven time and time again with students. So they definitely do work fundamentally. But if you're stopping yourself from experimenting because they may seem slightly similar to a previous technique that you've tried to use that you had a bad experience in, then it's not going to be accurate. Because even if it was a very similar technique, and even if the subtle differences don't ultimately change the technique too much, they're not packaged in an entire system. And that's what I'm going to be teaching you, is an entire system where the weaknesses of one technique are supplemented and filled by the strengths of a different technique that comes in. So that's how the system is designed to be incredibly comprehensive and robust. That in itself is like a Swiss cheese model to make sure that there are no gaps that pass through. So, in summary, unlearning means that you're aware that there are certain things that you may have learned in the past that were incorrect, or certain experiences that may have been negative for you in the past that aren't representative of what we're going to be covering. If you had a magic lamp and you had to rub it and you were to summon a genie, what's the wish that you would want granted? That in the movie Aladdin was banned. Everyone always says that they want to wish for more wishes. And that's really what learning is, right? Learning is the ultimate skill. Learning is the ability to wish for more wishes. Learning is the ability to learn anything faster. It's to be better at English and maths and statistics and science and better at learning skills and picking up new hobbies and getting better at sports. It's the ability to use your brain to take in and solve problems and get to where you need to go in the environment and world around you. It's the wish for more wishes. But unlearning is the other side of the same coin. If learning is the most important skill that you can gain, then unlearning is the requirement that allows you to even learn. It's what opens the door for learning in the first place. So I'm going to make this very clear. What you're going to learn in this course is very different. In fact, it may already have been pretty different to what you were expecting or have learned in the past. You have to accept that. So I know that you're keen to start applying these systems and learn how to do it and learn the techniques and everything, but you have to remember that you can't be so eager to climb the mountain as quickly as possible that you forget to check your gear, put your harness on, do the fitness training, do all the preparation and have the right support and foundation in place. Otherwise, you're going to fall off mid-climb. And it's what I see a lot with students is that they take these techniques and they just try to rush through them as quickly as possible. They don't spend time to practice. They say, oh yeah, that's easy enough. And they just skip to the next one and just keep going and just bulldoze through. And then a month later they say, oh, you know what, Justin, it didn't really work for me. It doesn't work because you didn't practice it. You need the foundation in place. What I want the most is I want you to be able to take these techniques that I have created and found and researched and compiled and disseminated to these thousands of students that I've worked with before. I want you to take these techniques, take them with you, and I want you to go out there and absolutely crush and dominate in your school or your state or your country and achieve all the goals that you want to achieve. That's what I want from you. But I know that that's not going to be possible if you just rush it. And this foundation is necessary because it's going to make your climb later on much smoother and much safer. It's going to stop you from getting demotivated. It's going to stop you from procrastinating as much. It's going to stop you from giving up halfway through. It's going to stop you from slamming the cube into the triangle until you realize you are the cube. And the triangle is your attempt at success, and you're just breaking down because you're just trying so hard and you're just not getting through there. That's not what I want to see. I want you to have a very smooth progression. I want you to have a smooth ascent and climb so that when I see you at base camp, I can say that was intense, but now we can look back and see how far we've come. I don't want to look back and see that everyone has just fallen off the side of the cliff because they were rushing through without having the right gear and the right level of fitness.